Hello everybody, Marty McConnell, the off-grid gecko here. Today I'm showing you a little part of the woods that I don't normally film at. I actually rarely ever come down here, but this time of year when it starts to cool off and all the mosquitoes disappear, it's actually a very pleasant little piece of forest. And the reason I like this particular area so much is because this is pretty much untamed wilderness right here. I mean, the logging people never came back here, and at least I don't think they did. There's not many stumps back here, and everything's just completely crude and torn up, and I absolutely love it. I'm going to be talking about a lot of stuff. So I'm going to be talking about the history of people. And when I say people, I don't necessarily mean human beings per se, but what the archaeologists like to call hominids. And the fossil record and all the data that we have currently shows that human beings started using stone tools about somewhere between 2 to 3 million years ago. There is one dig site that's a little older, but in terms of keeping with the geologic scale, that's what I'm going to focus on. Sorry, I keep getting distracted by everything. I'm going to try not to get too distracted. I'm going to stay focused on this video. Look, a squirrel! So, stone tools are basically the originator of evidence for human increased thinking capacity and the use of tools because they survive better than any other tools made. But the original tools that most hominids start using is this right here, just a stick laying on the ground. You can pick it up, and even in chimpanzees and other members of the great apes today, a chimp will take a stick like this, dig it into a termite mound, let the termites start attacking it, and then they'll pull it out and just lick off all the termites, and it makes for an easy meal for them. So actually the Stone Age really began with little sticks and wood tools, and the difference between stone tools and wood tools obviously is a little bit of durability, and stone tools last. So how we identify stone tools though is itself kind of a misnomer, because they basically identify them by finding a site where humans or hominids were obviously living for a prolonged period of time, and the tools have kind of accumulated at that site where they can dig out fragments and pieces of broken stones. The problem with this theory is while hunter-gatherer societies were still roaming, a lot of times I don't think they would have picked up and kept stone tools for very long. I think stone tools may have been actually built for purpose in the field and then discarded once their use was eliminated. Of course there'd be a plane flying right overhead. So going by archaeological records is not necessarily the best way to determine when stone tools actually started to be used. It could have been much, much earlier. And going back to my example with the stick, if a chimp pulls this stick off the ground, digs a couple termites out, once they get bored digging termites out of the hill, what do? They don't carry this back to their home with the other chimps. They just chuck it on the ground and they're on their way. And stone tools probably at their origin would have been used a lot in similar fashion. So I'm going to try and find a chunk of rock. Here's a good little flat rock. It's probably not going to make a very good tool of any kind, but for our purposes it'll work. And a stone tool is basically created through the process of something known as flaking. I prefer to call it hammering for old stone tools. So those old stone tools that they found in Kenya, a lot of them look like some of my early experiments with flint knapping. You basically hit a rock with another rock, and this is the origin of technology right here, smashing two rocks together and then figuring out how to hit them where they'll break off at an angle where this will become an actual usable tool instead of just being something that's that just breaks off flat like that. Obviously this can't be used for anything. So these sedimentary rocks around here are not always the best for making stone tools. but I've learned to kind of make do with them. So the first tool that humans would have used and immediately discarded, in my opinion, would have been this, the hammerstone. So you find yourself a good, heavy, solid, sturdy chunk of rock, and you can use it to just break other rocks apart, and it'll last for a while until the face starts chipping away at it. Then you throw it down and you pick up another rock. So Stone Age technology probably started a lot longer before people actually started hauling things like this back to their campsite with them. So in addition to stone tools, people would have obviously used other technologies for doing various things. So this is a piece of driftwood or just fallen wood that's come down here. It's fairly sturdy, so it's not rotted out, to make a good stick for firewood, basically, that could be found picked up off the ground and used. It could be used as a club. Smaller pieces could be used as a spear, even without a rocky point. Like, you can sharpen the tip on a rock by just grinding it away. I may give a demonstration of that in a minute, but something else I want to demonstrate is a type of technology that we don't think of, and that's action-oriented technology. So a modern human would look at this and say, okay, let me bust out my silkie saw or my axe or my hatchet and bust this up into lengths of usable firewood, whereas an ancient person may have tried something more like this. There's a couple pieces. There's another piece. And there's another couple pieces. This is obviously a hell of a lot faster way of making firewood than sitting here picking away at this with a saw. And it's a methodology for making firewood that, you know, would have persisted for a long time. Now this is a little punky, so I was wrong in that respect, but it's mostly a solid chunk of wood. I can remember a time out in Tennessee when I actually went out to find firewood, or maybe it was southern Indiana. We were right next to the border, wherever we were, border between Kentucky and Indiana, and I was asked to go out to the woods and collect some firewood. And even though I was given an axe to take with me, this is how I processed all my firewood, from small sticks like this all the way up to logs that are up to 6 inches in diameter. You basically, if you can heft them off the ground and drop them on some kind of solid point, even if it's another log, the weight of the log itself will oftentimes snap it in half into usable pieces that can be carried, tuned up, and turned into other tools. Now, in order to make friction fires requires being able to split wood like this. So that is one place where a stone tool comes in handy for the very simplest version of a tool in history, which I typically call the axe. It's actually the wedge. So if I can figure out a way to wedge something into this crack here, then I can split this piece of wood or wedge it into the end. You can split it down and make something usable out of it. What I have here is basically a triangular shaped rock. Comes to an edge, just a broken piece that I found laying, actually. Again, you can make this kind of thing by simply knocking away at a piece of rock until you get an edge. Now, when most people think of an inclined plane or a wedge, basically, we think of taking it and striking down on something to bust it apart. When it comes to splitting firewood, because firewood always burns better when it's split, you can also do the opposite. So you can set this down and use it like an anvil. And then it took me a while to bust this piece up, and I basically broke this piece by the same methodology. So I took my little rock here and put this on top and basically just start hammering away at it until I was able to crack it at a point that would make a reasonable club. So there's wood technology number one, and this is something an archaeologist would never think to look for. And then we're going to take our piece of wood that we want to split, and we can do this two ways. You can put it down like this and try and split it, or you can try and split it long ways. So there's a split piece of wood. Another advantage of splitting wood is that you end up with a flat piece here that can be used for different purposes. Okay, so I'm going to split some of these guys up real quick and just see if I can find something useful for the next portion here. There's another piece, and it splits that easy. If it's got a crack running down it already, you could just break it apart with a club and a rock. So this is really your first axe, okay? And I've been thinking for a long time that axes probably didn't start off hafted on the end of a tool. Well, they obviously didn't, but these hand tools weren't always used in the fashion that we tend to think of them being used in modern humans. A lot of times, something like this could be used as an anvil far more effectively than it can as a hammer. So instead of putting the thing on here and trying to hammer down into it, which is a pain in the butt and prone to missing, you just put that crack piece on there where you want it to break, and then hit it with something else that's fairly hard. And you can break even dense, heavy pieces of wood right open. Now, I was fortunate to find a mulberry tree, and I think mulberry may be fairly good for this purpose, so I'm going to try and fashion me up a little drill kit here. But yeah, the first step in making a bow drill is to actually make something to drill onto, and very quickly and efficiently I've got a little flat spot on the end here that is probably usable for this purpose. So let's do a little test drilling on here. Oh yeah, that'll work good. So my next step is I need to cut like a little dimple in here to hold the Now I've got a little pointy thing. This type of tool would be known as a burin. I believe that's how it's pronounced. And you can actually use this to bore a little small hole in here just by twisting it. Scraping, twisting, scraping, twisting, and of course this is a cheap grade of rock, so it's going to dull fairly quickly, but ought to be able to get something started here. I think I found me a little bit nicer table over here. Looks like the squirrels have been using it for breaking acorns open. So they've obviously been using it. So while my little fire making foray over there is not a inherent success, I haven't made a friction fire successfully in years, so I'm not surprised. I have to figure out what woods work out here and what doesn't. This is tree bark. And this is another tool that's readily available. So basically what I did was I took this little sapling here. This is a maple sapling, I believe. And I just kind of crushed it on one end. And then working it by hand with no tools at all except my fingers, you can strip this and kind of break it apart. And you can peel off a section of bark, okay? And you want to get rid of most of the hard outer bark if you can, which is not always incredibly easy. But when you get the rest of the junk off of it, and you get down to this little bark inside here, then you can pull these little fibers out of it. Alright, now to make string, cordage is one of these things that survivalists always have in their pack, and I've got tons in my pack over there. But can you see alright? Let me turn that up just a little bit. Alrighty, so to make cordage, take this little string that you get from the bark of the tree. This in fact is the bark of the tree, and you just twist it and it'll make a little loop, okay? And you just keep twisting it a little bit, and that loop will start to turn, and then at that point all you have to do is twist this side and pull, twist that side, pull. I'm twisting the side that's facing you, and then I'm just grabbing the other side with my in between my fingers and pulling it around forward, and before long you have the makings of a little piece of string. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, this is tree bark, it's going to break the first time you try to use it. But no, it's actually surprisingly strong. And there's the light. I'm sorry, I can't control the sun. But you have a little twisted up string, and it'll stay twisted like this. Now what I found is the secret is not to over twist and not to try and, you know, He-Man it up on this. Just twist gently a couple times and turn it and turn it and turn it. And this is the same technique I used to make the little trash bag string that I was talking about earlier, and you can use this to make a lot of twine. Now you're saying, well, I can only get small pieces of bark. I really need to turn on that auto adjust and figure out how to make it work, because these clouds are annoying. So you can only find these little pieces of bark that are only this long. Like, how are you supposed to make a string of any size with that? Well, what you do is you take your next piece of bark here, which I can't seem to get the outer skin off of, so I maybe need to use a more mature part of that tree, but this will work for demonstration purposes. And you just lay that on top of one of your little strands here and twist them together for a few twists. And you're going to have to hold it tight for a minute, which is kind of a trick, until it gets woven into the rest of the strand. And now you've got a nice long tail on there, so you can continue winding down. So I'll take another piece of string here and twist it up on this side. And do the same thing, just basically over, under. So you twist the side that's away from you and then reach underneath and drag the other side across, and just kind of hold the current position in place with your other hand. And just a little twist and a turn, twist and a turn, twist and a turn. And within a matter of a couple hours, you can have a pretty reliable piece of string. And that sunlight is going to kill me by the end of the day. And you'll notice the bark kind of wants to start flaking off a little bit, the outer bark, as you go. Just kind of peel it off the best that you can, but it's not, if it doesn't come out perfect, if this is your first piece of string, the technique is the main thing. I'm not going to devote a lot of time to making a super high quality thread here. I just want to show you sort of the basics. You just basically, you know, weave a new piece in whenever you need to, and just get it in with the twist, and before long you've got a very flexible, very usable, fairly strong piece of string that could be used maybe to make a bow drill. Which of course is the next phase of technology. And all you do when you need another piece of fiber is you just peel off some more bark. Ooh, look, there's long pieces. And you can actually weave like an entire rope out of a small piece, a small little sapling like this. You just peel off whatever you can get, and then break it into smaller bundles of fiber like this, and then just keep overlapping and keep making string. I'm going to sit here and make string for a while. See how well that cuts? Isn't that amazing? Nope. Well, the string's holding. The idea is sound in principle. We're just haggling over theory now. Yeah, it's not working. You may be wondering what my theory is on how people ever came up with this idea. The only thing I can think of is that people were using this technique to bore holes in shells or pieces of wood for different reasons, And then they found out that that creates a lot of heat. And over the course of the next couple thousand generations, they tried figuring out how to harness this newfound heat to make fire. In terms of the most efficient method of doing it, which obviously isn't this. Okay, I was actually starting to work. I was getting a little bit of smoke. So, and that's using my piece of mulberry. I think it's mulberry. And that driftwood dowel. So what I'm doing now is using another rock that I picked up off the ground to carve me out a little notch where that stuff can come out. I got a little leaf here to catch an ember, if I manage to make one today. And I'm not saying I will. But if I do, this will be the first time I've made a friction fire in years, and it will be completely with natural materials. Absolutely nothing synthetic except for my clothing. So you can see that grinds out a pretty good notch. All you need is kind of a sandpapery rock with a decent little edge on it, and you carve you a notch, just basically sanding it into the fire stick. Alright, so that's not going so well today. But I'm getting closer. I had smoke coming up, and then I cut myself a notch, started feeling the burning smell again, and but that's about all the time I'm willing to devote to it. We'll be doing some more on that later, but until then, I hope you like this video. I hope you like all my videos, actually. So you probably don't, because they're so diverse. You're bound to hate one of them. But stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe and join me next time, because we're going to be doing more walking in the woods. And I'm going to make this sort of like my little primitive camp down here. So hopefully I'll come down here and we'll do more of this stuff in this part of the woods where it's, you know, I'm really, really isolated from anything resembling humanity, and like the cats actually don't follow me down here, so that's a plus. I'll see you next time. Bye.